Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our telephone town hall meeting tonight. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're going to be on for the next hour. If you have a question, and these calls go really, really well. If you have questions, please press 0 on the keypad on your phone, 0 if you have a question, and press 7 on the keypad on your phone if you want to get updates from time to time from the Congresswoman. 7. We need that email address. We have operators standing by for that, as we have operators standing by to get your question queued up. So I'm going to say this 2 more times, and I'm going to hand it off to you, Congresswoman Wild. Here goes. Welcome to our telephone town hall meeting. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're going to be on for the next hour. If you have a question, please press 0. That's 0 on the keypad on your phone. I see some people on the screen are taking us up on that, and that's great news. That's 0 for a question. And press 7 on the keypad on your phone, 7 if you wouldn't mind, so we can get build up our email list and communicate with more and more of you if we could. So it's 0 for questions and 7 for email updates. Congresswoman Susan Wild, please take it away.
Thank you so much, Kurt. Good evening, everybody. This is Congresswoman Susan Wild. I want to thank you all for joining tonight's telephone town hall. I'm really happy to have the opportunity to spend the evening with you, even if we're not able to be together in the same place. It's been a long time since I've been able to do an in-person town hall, and I'm looking forward to being able to do them again. But I know that this has been just an incredibly difficult time for so many people. And as we are in high school and college graduation season, I am constantly thinking of all of the students and their parents whose graduation or prom plans have been upended. As a parent, I felt this firsthand as I watched my son graduate from law school via Zoom. I will say it was the most comfortable graduation I ever attended, but at the same time, it was sad not to be there in person with all of our family members. And honestly, it's just hard for everyone to be entering summer with so much uncertainty. And I know many of you have had vacation plans canceled or rearranged. Right now, most people are focused on when are they going to get back to work. And, you know, that's not generally what we're thinking of at the beginning of the summer months. So having said that, I just want you to know that I am with you. I really believe strongly that we need to approach this problem that we are in right now, and I'm talking specifically of COVID and the fallout from COVID, in as nonpartisan a way as possible. This should not be a political football. This should be something that we are all working together, recognizing risks and hazards, but also recognizing that we need to reopen our economy and that we need to do so safely. And I really want to work with all of you. I want your suggestions and thoughts and concerns so that I can take them back to Washington and try to problem solve for you, because the thing I like doing most is problem solving. So whether you have been furloughed or laid off or are a frontline worker or an essential worker who's been working all the way through this, if you're separated from your family members, you're trying to work from home and balance childcare or any other disruption that's caused by coronavirus, I just want to say that I hear you, I see you, and I will continue working for you as we recover from this crisis together. I would be remiss if I didn't open up tonight's forum by acknowledging what a painful moment this has been for all of America. Not only are we experiencing a pandemic that has now taken the lives of almost 115,000 Americans and put a huge strain on our small businesses, our nonprofits, our working families, but now communities across America are also experiencing the profound grief and anger about systemic racism and injustice. And when the history books are written, we will be talking about these two crises in the same chapter, I suspect. And it's not just about policing or in courts of law, but also in housing, the economy, our healthcare system, and so many areas of life. So I just want to promise to all of you that I will always listen to you. I will always do my best to carry your voices and your concerns to Washington, where I am working to make your lives better. It's a hard time, but I really do believe that we're going to get through this, and I believe and hope that we can make our recovery from COVID as nonpartisan as possible, recognizing that we all have a common enemy, and that enemy is COVID and the destruction that it has wrought on the health and economic well-being of all people. Before I start taking questions, I just wanted to give you a brief update on what has been happening in my office and in Congress over the past few months. In the wake of COVID-19, I was proud to have two pieces of legislation included in the final CARES Act package and signed into law by the President. The first was called the Combating Hunger for Older Americans During Coronavirus Crisis Act. It's a long name for a simple bill. It helps ensure that older individuals and individuals with disabilities were able to receive the meals that they might have typically received in group settings like a senior center through delivery instead throughout this pandemic. You may very well know people who go to adult day centers, senior centers, and often receive nutrition there when times are normal, quote unquote. This bill simply provided that there would be funding for delivery of those meals throughout this crisis. The second bill that was signed into law by the President was the Home Health Care Planning Improvement Act. It allows Medicare beneficiaries to get faster and flexible care where and when they need it by allowing in-home health care to be prescribed by medical personnel other than doctors, for instance, nurses. In the past, Medicare has required that a physician's visit occur, at which time the physician order home health care. That is no longer needed. Think about people who needed to get routine medical care, non-COVID related, for heart disease, cancer, or otherwise and needed some sort of home health care, and now they are able to get that without needing a physician's order. More recently, I have led legislation with Representative Brian Fitzpatrick, a Republican from Bucks County, to ensure continued funding for the Children's Health Insurance Program, popularly known as CHIP. The bill that he and I have led is called CHIPPER, and it's the reason for that bill is that the CHIP program was set, the funding for it was set to expire at the end of September, and I believe that we will be successful in getting that bill passed before the end of September so that CHIP does not run out. I have also led a bill to open an emergency enrollment period so that people can get health care at a time when they need it so badly. And I'm very, very proud that Senator Casey sponsored the Senate version of that effort. And finally, I've also always, since I got to Congress, focused efforts on the price of prescription drugs. In a broader sense, health care and the ability to get good quality, affordable health care has always been at the very top of my priority list. But I came to realize after I got to Congress that part and parcel of that is making sure that people can afford their prescription drugs. We have many, many people in our district with diabetes. The price of insulin is something that I have heard about every single day. So during COVID, I led an effort to set price caps on prescription drugs, not all prescription drugs, but those drugs that treat the medical conditions that are most likely to be adversely affected by this virus. For instance, insulin for diabetes, inhalers for asthma, medication for heart disease, because we know people with those underlying ailments are more susceptible to COVID and the serious ramifications of COVID. So in addition to that, today I introduced a bill alongside my colleague, Representative Sherry Bustos of Illinois, the Crisis Care Improvement Act of 2020. It's a bill that funds and establishes county crisis systems that coordinate real-time, immediate response for mental health care, including 24/7 mobile crisis units that offer outreach and support and can travel to individuals who are in need. I believe it's truly a piece of groundbreaking legislation. Increasing access to mental health care and affordability has been one of my top priorities since I've been in Congress, and the added financial stress and adverse mental health effects of this pandemic have only made that priority all the more pressing. And on the small business front, which we know has been so adversely affected by COVID, the House recently passed in addition to the PPP program, about which you have heard so much, that was part of the CARES Act, we very recently passed the Paycheck Protection Program Flexibility Act. So it's the Ppp Flexibility Act. And I point to this bill as an example of Congress acting at its best. Congress being able to respond quickly to concerns that are voiced by our constituents. So after we passed the PPP, we were hearing from small businesses that there were certain aspects of it that were too cumbersome or didn't really suit their needs. And within a matter of weeks, we passed the Flexibility Act, which increases access to PPP loans and to small businesses and nonprofits by extending the time that the PPP program will be in effect. It provides employers greater flexibility on how the funds can be used, and it lengthens the forgiveness and repayment schedule. It is flexibility that has been widely requested by local business owners and demonstrates the work that we can actually do when we listen to people in our communities, and that's exactly the reason for this kind of town hall. So as our health crisis stabilizes, fingers crossed after that word, and we move into the recovery phase, our economic security and stability have to be our top priority. The House is working throughout the summer on several must-pass bills, such as appropriations, the 2021 National Defense Authorization Act, an infrastructure package that is very exciting and is long overdue, and related health care legislation. I look forward, as always, to working with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to make sure that our communities are able to recover from the crisis and begin to thrive again. So I want to tell you that I hope to be as responsive as possible to all of you as we move forward, to our state and local leaders, our private sectors. I thank you all for participating in tonight's call. This is a broader version of a weekly call that I have every Friday morning with leaders in our community, ranging from the healthcare sector to schools to the senior sector, talking about the problems. And I've been doing this. I just did my 14th, or maybe tomorrow morning is my 14th working group call, where I hear from community leaders about what they are seeing and hearing in the community. But this tonight is a broader version of that, where I hear from all of you. So with that, I look forward to answering your questions. And Kurt, I'm ready for them.
We have a bunch of great questions coming up. I just want to do some housekeeping, though. If you want to get on the email list for email updates, please press 7. That's 7 on the keypad on your phone. We're always trying to bolster our email list so we can send out more information to more folks. That's 7 on the keypad on your phone. If you have a question, press 0. Many people have done that. Chad started it off. Chad, welcome to the call. Chad, go ahead with your question, if you would, please.
Okay, thank you, Congresswoman, for taking my call. My name is Chad. I am a postal employee at the Lehigh Valley Processing Center in Bethlehem for 33 years. My concern is the Postal Service is very low on funds and will run out of money by September. The first bill that went through, the $2.2 trillion, had $25 billion in to assist the post office. As you know, the post office does not get any taxpayer money. We operate based on postage that we get and packages and stuff like that. President Trump did not give us the first one, and from what we're hearing, he's not going to sign any bills. My concern is we're going to run out of money in September. The Postal Service employs 630,000 employees and is the highest employer of veterans. So my question is there a bill that the Congress, or I should say the representatives and the Senate, will pass to keep the post office afloat?
So, Chad, thank you so much for asking me that question. First and foremost, let me tell you that I am a huge proponent of making sure that we are supporting our Postal Service as we move forward. It provides so many vital services. It is popular, meaning the Postal Service is popular with people on both sides of the aisle. We hear from seniors every day about how they do not want to see the Postal Service dismantled or privatized because they have come to count on receiving their daily mail, whether it be hopefully, a card from a grandchild, or even a piece of political literature or a bill or whatever, and having some kind of interaction with their postal worker. So it's incredibly important for our seniors as well as for the large number of postal employees, veterans that you employ, and so forth. So having said that, I am concerned about the political division about the Postal Service. You are absolutely correct. The Postal Service does not use any taxpayer money to exist. It exists because of the sale of stamps and packaging and the related materials that the Postal Service provides, as well as, I guess, relationships with Amazon and other online distributors that also help to support the Postal Service. So we will continue to support that bill. We will continue to support the emergency funding that is needed for the Postal Service. And I'm going to segue slightly, Chad, into the issue of voting by mail, which many people used this year, found it to be very convenient, a very safe way to vote. Many people commented to me that they liked the opportunity to fill out their mail-in ballot at home where they could sit in front of their computer and research the candidates that they were voting for and not be under pressure at the polling place to cast their ballot, and also to feel safe because they weren't in a public place during COVID. We don't know where we will be in November. I hope we are long past COVID. I truly do. But if we are not, we really need to make sure that the Postal Service exists so that all Americans can exercise their right to vote and we can continue to participate in this great democracy. And the Postal Service is an integral part of that, and I will always be a supporter of the Postal Service. So thank you for that question.
Thank you for a great answer. Let's take another question. It's going to be from Anthony. Anthony, welcome to the call. Anthony, go ahead with your question, please.
Yes, hi, Congresswoman. Thank you for all you do. I have a question about unemployment. I was on a town hall call with you back on April 16th and received a lot of information. One of your guests was Susan Dickinson from the Unemployment Compensation Office, and I had applied back in the beginning of April and didn't have any reason to contact her office, and I received the proper paperwork on my letter of determination that I was going to get unemployment. I received one check, which was the beginning of April, and have not gotten anything since. I followed the procedure that Susan said, which was to call the number that she gave on a Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. I've tried that all 5 days a week. The number rings and it immediately disconnects you. I've tried emailing. I've tried calling every day. I've sent numerous emails. I wrote them a letter. It is absolutely impossible to get through to unemployment. I've heard that they've hired several hundred people. They've trained several hundred people. I consider myself a very patient person, and I know how, obviously I read the news, I know how overwhelmed the office is. But what is a person to do at this point, all these weeks and weeks later?
So, Anthony, first of all, let me say, one of my greatest disappointments has been the way that programs that were intended to really relieve the stress and burden on Americans have really failed to roll out the way they should have. Now, you are absolutely right. Pennsylvania and every other state has been confronted with an unprecedented number of applicants for unemployment that they, quite frankly, were not expecting. But we are now several months into this, and I am continuing to hear from people like you who tell me that they are not receiving their unemployment checks and that they literally cannot put food on their table. They cannot pay their rent. They can't pay their bills. We did provide that resource, which I guess was semi-helpful in our last town hall. I do believe, and by the way, this is not exclusive to Pennsylvania. I am hearing this from other representatives in Congress that every state seems to be having just ridiculous delays in getting people's unemployment. But I want to just introduce you by telephone to my district director, Megan Best, because she has at her fingertips information that may be helpful to you. And all I can tell you is that I know those payments are coming. That's not much satisfaction. They're very, very slow, and it's really a problem, and we've got to do better in the future, and we've got to learn from our experiences. Megan, can you help Anthony out at all with this issue?
Thank you, Congresswoman. And Anthony, I'd be happy to follow up with you individually tomorrow to talk about your specific case. But just for everyone else on the call, we work closely together with our state legislators, the state representatives, and state senators that represent you. They can advocate for you on a state level, inquire to the Pennsylvania Department of Labor and Industry, and that seems to be getting some answers for a lot of constituents. So, Anthony, I will follow up with you tomorrow, but if any other constituents have questions regarding who their state legislators are, you're welcome to give our office a call.
And Megan, can you just give them the phone number for our office?
It is 484-781-6000. So I'll repeat that. 484-781-6000.
And I apologize to everybody. Like everyone else, I'm working from home, and I've got a rowdy dog. So apologize for the noise interference here. Okay, can we go to the next question, Kurt?
You bet we can. It's going to be Alan. Alan, welcome to the call. Alan, please go ahead with your question.
Thank you for taking the call, Congresswoman. I'm not sure if you're going to know the answer or aware of it because it's a state issue, not national, but my understanding is that a couple of nights ago, both the Pennsylvania House and Pennsylvania Senate passed a resolution to end the lockdown, if you will. Is that still active? What would be the next steps? Is that something that's going to happen, not going to happen? Any information you're able to provide is appreciated.
Well, thank you for that question, Alan. I know what you're talking about. It was the state Senate passed the resolution to end the emergency declaration that Governor Wolf had imposed that actually provided access. In order to get certain federal funds, states have to be in a state of emergency. And so every single state in the country ended up with an emergency declaration so that they would have access to these emergency funds, or these federal funds, excuse me. And so quite frankly, I'm not quite sure why the state Senate took that vote and passed that, given the fact that it would deprive, if it were to become law, it would deprive Pennsylvania of vital federal funding for all kinds of things that have been, for schools, for healthcare systems, for state unemployment systems. And it will not pass, I don't believe, because I believe that, it's passed, but Governor Wolf is going to veto it, and I don't believe that it is veto-proof. So I don't, but I want to just point out that resolution was couched in such a way that it would prevent Governor Wolf or any future governor from declaring a state of emergency for federal funding purposes. And to me, that's a politicization of an issue that I just don't think we should be going there. I think that it's incredibly important for the administrative branch of every state, whether it's, it doesn't matter what state it is, but the governor must have the ability to declare an emergency so as to access, whether it's National Guard money, National Guard resources, or federal funding through bills like the CARES Act. So right now it is has been passed by the Senate, but I don't expect it to become law.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Michael is next. Michael from Allentown. Michael, welcome to our telephone town hall meeting. Please go ahead, Michael, with your question.
Thank you, Congressman Wild, for doing this. Especially when the lockdowns in the state's emergency first came into effect, and during the worst part of the COVID-19, the the casualty numbers from all the effects of the virus have been much higher than what just the hospitalizations and deaths from the virus, including suicides, dramatic increase in suicide, and domestic violence and abuse. Do you have any plans to try to bring it to the forefront, or to try to put a little more emphasis on the fact of, hey, look, that this was just that there's a lot more deaths and there were a lot more casualties and effects from the virus than just the virus itself?
Michael, that's a really good point. It's one of the main reasons that I co-sponsored with Congresswoman Bustos today, the Mental Health Act that we just introduced. But I will tell you, earlier this week, I did a roundtable with local area mental health workers and psychologists. And a lot of the things they said were so obvious, and yet at the same time were things that I hadn't thought about. So most of them who have existing patients or clients, whichever they call them, have been doing televisits with their clients. The problem is that, let's say you mentioned domestic abuse. Let's say you are living in a home with an abuser. Your ability to actually have a private, confidential session with your therapist is impossible if, your abuser is sitting in the same room with you. And so we really, as I said, mental health care has been a huge priority of mine. And you're right. The toll from COVID-19 is not just going to be able to be calculated based on the number of people who actually died from the disease, as devastating as that number is. It's also going to be in the people who feel hopeless, who feel that they have lost their life savings that they invested in a small business, the children who perhaps are not in the most ideal of homes and don't have the respite of going to school where they interact with other children and their teachers and their guidance counselors. And so I really believe that we're going to have to expand our definition of what the full toll of COVID-19 was, and so that we really understand what the impact of this pandemic was. And then, as I said before, that we learn from this experience. It's not just about putting those numbers down, but also learning what we can do better as we move forward. So it's a really good point, Michael.
Yes, my name is Tibor. I live in Bethlehem. I just want to echo the previous caller. I mean, I found myself unemployed during this time, and it took a good month. It took a month before I got my first payment, and I thought everything was going to be fine. And then I didn't get paid until actually yesterday. I had to wait 6 weeks, and I'm just really concerned about people, that don't have the resources to make it through this kind of crisis. And I was lucky because I had some family help in this time here. But I'm also concerned too that it's the federal extension is going to end in July, and also the kind of the bigger question, I think, for me, one of the things this has shown is when you have people's health insurance connected to their jobs, people are suddenly unemployed, and they also lose their health care at the same time. I know I was without health care for a number of weeks because of this as well, so I got on medical assistance here. So I'm just kind of wondering what you think about that, and what you think the prospects are for any sort of kind of more long-term kind of structural reforms in terms of unemployment, or some people have talked about
Kurt, I just lost.
Yeah, sorry. I muted him and I muted me. Tibor wanted to know. He was. The question goes to you. What do you think about what Tibor was saying, please? I apologize.
Okay. So another really salient and important question, and there are multi-parts to it. First, let me just say, as I said before, that when we passed on an overwhelmingly bipartisan basis, and when I say overwhelmingly, I mean every single member of Congress but for one voted for the CARES Act that provided for enhanced unemployment payments. And I thought, This is terrific. We need to do this. This is a time of despair and stress for people who are losing their jobs, not, worried about what their future is. And we are going to enhance the unemployment payments for a period of time to get people back on their feet and hopefully stimulate the economy. And then what didn't happen was, and again, I recognize that all of the states were overwhelmed by the burden, but honestly, the level of complexity in getting those payments to people who need them has been, I think, a travesty. And I think this, more than maybe any other issue, needs to be something that is worked on and that we fix before this kind of crisis ever hits again. So you also bring up a really important point, and that is the relationship in this country between your health insurance and your job. Not everybody gets their health insurance through their job, and I recognize that. Many, many people do. About 75% of the people in our district get their health insurance by way of their job. So if you lose your job, you lose your health insurance. And that's a really critical issue. And we're going to be, as we enter the second half of this year, we are going to be facing a situation where I think we have more people than ever before who are uninsured because they have lost their health insurance and simply cannot afford to obtain it in any other way. And, of course, this is at a time when they're not getting their unemployment checks, they've lost their job, and how are they supposed to also go out and pay for health insurance? And in some cases, they will qualify for medical assistance, but as you mentioned, that's a process in and of itself. So I believe that we are going to be seeing legislation that will actually try to deal with this issue specifically of the health insurance ramifications, making sure that we are subsidizing coverage for people who have lost their health insurance as a result of this. So I hate to be in a position of criticizing the work that has been done, and I think the work that we have done is really important, but unfortunately, as well-intentioned as it was, it just has not worked out as well as it should have, and for that I'm very sorry for the situation that so many people find themselves in of the delays in receiving their unemployment insurance or now not being able to afford health insurance. I will say that was the main reason for me to lead the effort and introduce a bill to reopen the exchanges and make sure that people would have access to purchasing health insurance at a time when they might have lost it. That has not gone anywhere. The administration has not been willing to do that, but we will continue to work. And as I said, Senator Casey is working with me on that issue.
Thank you so much for that. Yes, I just want to remind people, last call, if they want to provide us with their email address, please press 7 so we can send you an email update from time to time. And if they have a question, press 0 on the keypad on your phone. Alice is next. Alice, welcome to the call. Alice, go ahead, please, if you would.
Good evening, Congresswoman Wild. Thank you so much for this town hall, and thank you for the statement that you made at the beginning of the meeting regarding the mourning that the country is in presently. So my question is, when you go back to Washington, whether or not the kind of police reform bills that you and your colleagues will put forth will be something more substantial than just focusing on training. Because if training were the only issue, then people across the board would be being killed by police. And that's just not what's happening. So there's something else that's underlying what is occurring, and the type of reform needs to reflect that.
Alice,
so I would appreciate.
You are so right. As I mentioned at the beginning of this, we are really in you're right. We're in a state of mourning in this country. Virtually everyone has seen the killing of George Floyd at the, I would say the hands, but the knee of a police officer who was charged with ensuring the safety of people in the community. And it simply can't be stated any other way. So I will tell you that we in Congress have been, we have asked the Congressional Black Caucus, otherwise known as the CBC, to take the lead in devising and writing legislation that will be introduced soon, of which I am a co-sponsor. It's the Justice and Policing Act. And it is more than just training. And you are absolutely right. It can't just be about training. We will probably take a vote on this bill late this month. And I just want to highlight what will be included in that bill. It will, first of all, step up pressure on the Justice Department to address systemic racial discrimination by law enforcement. So those are easy words to say. Doesn't mean a whole lot unless you have something concrete behind it. So the concrete parts of it are that it will require body and dashboard cameras. It will ban chokeholds. Okay, that to me is one of the most important parts of this bill. It will end the use of no-knock warrants in drug cases, which have been shown to result in fatalities to an alarming number of Black people. And it will also enact steps to end racial profiling. In addition to that, the Justice and Policing Act will require that deadly force be used only as a last resort, and it will require officers to employ de-escalation techniques first. It will change the standard to evaluate whether law enforcement's use of force was justified. Currently, that standard is, was the force reasonable? And instead, it will change it to, was the force necessary? Two entirely different things. The bill will also demilitarize the police. It will limit the transfer of military weaponry to state and local police departments. Another incredibly vital piece of this bill that I am amazed has never happened before. Our military should not be providing weapons to our state and local police departments that are supposed to be charged. I'm getting a lot of interference there, Kurt. The police departments are supposed to be acting for the betterment of our communities, for the safety of our communities, and should not be engaging in military tactics. The bill also, and this I think is very important, invest in our communities outside of our police forces. It would establish public safety innovation grants for community-based organizations, not police organizations, but community-based organizations, to create local commissions and task forces to help reimagine and develop concrete, just, and equitable public safety measures. And finally, it would remove barriers to prosecuting the police for misconduct and recovering damages from officers who have violated civilians' rights. And it would end qualified immunity by law enforcement. So I think it's a groundbreaking bill. I think that we have done the right thing by having this led by the CBC. Chairwoman Karen Bass of the CBC is a friend and mentor. She and I served together on the Africa Subcommittee in the Foreign Affairs Committee. I am incredibly impressed by the work that they have done, and I look forward to taking a vote on this bill at the end of this month. So thank you, Alice. You were 100% correct.
Carrie's next. Carrie, welcome to the call. Carrie, please go ahead with your question.
Good evening, Congresswoman. Thank you for your time tonight. I understand that education is reserved for the state's jurisdiction, but the property tax disparity has become so much more apparent since the school COVID shutdowns. and moving forward now with a call for equitable educational opportunities. So what influence does Congress have, or advice you can give us for being involved in trying to equalize our school district system?
So, Carrie, thank you for that question. I'm on the House Education and Labor Committee. It was my committee of choice. It was my first choice of committees because I am so committed to the cause of public education, and I mean equal public education for all in this country, which we have not accomplished despite the many decades of talking about equality in public education. So, having said that, you're right. Unfortunately, education matters or individual school matters are by and large devoted to or relinquished to the state. Quite candidly, we have received almost no support from the Federal Department of Education. Betsy DeVos, who is the Secretary of Education, has appeared before the Education and Labor Committee on several occasions, and the solution that she seems to support has to do with providing lots of support for private schools and not much support for public school education. I firmly believe that public school education is a right. I think that it is essential that we have quality public school education in every district, regardless of the zip code. And so in answer to your question, I will tell you that I have fought long and hard to make sure that we were able to bring resources back to this district to help the school districts most in need. As a result of the CARES Act, I was really, really proud. This might have been my proudest moment in Congress, if I may take a moment of personal privilege, to stand with the superintendent of the Allentown School District, Thomas Parker, to announce that we were able to get almost $10 million in funding for the Allentown School District. And when I asked him when he heard that news, what was his reaction, he said to me, I literally was doing backflips because it meant that I was going to be able to provide the computer hardware, the internet connectivity, and so forth for the Allentown students who had not been able to benefit from the online learning experience that so many of the suburban school districts had been providing to their students. This kind of inequity has to be ended. We have to be making sure that our students in every single part of our district and every district across America are getting an equal education. And it will be, the Education and Labor Committee is part of my soul. It is where I spend the bulk of my time when I'm in Congress, when we are actually sitting in Congress and having committee hearings and so forth. I will tell you that next week I have 2 hearings, even though we're still working remotely. We have 2 hearings having to do with how do our schools recover from COVID, and how do we relaunch our schools as we move forward. So it's an incredibly pertinent question, and one that actually is something that I lose sleep over, that we have students who, and you know, the other thing that I will just mention is that we have a lot of students who are dependent on going to school for their nutritional needs. And we have got to make sure, whatever your views are on people receiving resources and assistance from the state or the federal government, our children should never struggle for food, for safety, and for an education. And I will forever be committed to that.
Let's take another question. It's from Tom. Tom, welcome to our call. Tom, please go ahead with your question.
Hi, Congresswoman Wild. Thank you so much for having this. This is just fantastic.
Hi,
I'm
Tom.
going to take a turn to a question about semiconductors. I'm unemployed, even though I was an essential worker going into this crisis, but now I've lost my job, as many of my colleagues have, through the magic of mergers and acquisitions that somehow allow 10% cuts in companies that still can somehow get funding and all that kind of stuff, which is another matter. But I guess what I see is that there's a semiconductor bringing manufacturing of chips that are for the cloud back to the United States. There's a bill in Congress by Representative Matsui from California. She and a Republican co-sponsor, as well as in the Senate, Senator Warner and a Republican co-sponsor, are bringing forward these bills. And I was hoping that you're going to be able to support that and also put in a good word for Allentown or the Lehigh Valley, because over the years we've given up so many jobs in this field and never gotten anything back. And I hope that you can somehow put in a good word for our community, because I know a lot of our colleagues are super commuting to other places, even though they still want to stay and live in this and have their families live in the valley. And they also want to make sure that we've got our presentation together that helps support you to try and pull any of these semiconductor manufacturing, chip manufacturing jobs back to this district.
Hey, Tom, really great question. And I will tell you, I've got a number of members of my team who are listening in on this call. They will be making note of that. I would very much like to take a look at that bill and sign on to it. It sounds, one of the things that I feel, the COVID crisis really made it so clear that we have to return to a made in America mentality. This may be a point that I am most in agreement with the administration on, that we need to really return to having jobs and products made here in this country. We saw with COVID the disadvantage that we were at because we didn't have PPE manufactured here in the U.S. So we were reliant on other countries for PPE, and there were all kinds of delays and huge problems with that. But more to the point, earlier today, actually, I just had a virtual roundtable, of course, with the National Association of Manufacturers and a number of local manufacturers in our district, and we were talking about trade issues. We were talking about the issues that are most important to making sure that our industries here in the Lehigh Valley, advanced manufacturing, which of course is what you're talking about, are able to thrive. Before COVID, what I was really focused on was making sure that we had enough of a workforce, because I was hearing from manufacturers throughout the district that they were having trouble attracting workers. Now, of course, that's slightly changed, but we have a trade disadvantage that we must work on. China has been a master of, essentially gobbling up most of the trade in the world, and a lot of that is at the detriment of their workers who are paid next to nothing. That's an issue for another day. But I will look at that bill, and certainly it sounds like something that I would sign on to. Doris has been a wonderful friend since I got to Congress, and I will look at it very carefully. And if I don't know if there's the opportunity, Kurt, for Tom to give us his contact information, but I'd be happy to get back to him and let him know exactly what we've done in terms of that bill. So thank you so much.
We have it in the report. We'll make sure you get it, okay?
Okay.
We're going to take Catherine next. Catherine, we're running kind of out of time, so quickly, what's your question, if you would, please?
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
We can.
Congresswoman, my name is Catherine, and I reside in Northampton County here in Pennsylvania, and I applaud your efforts, and I am very impressed listening to you, so thank you for this opportunity. My concern or question simply is that my 78-year-old father is living in a nursing home and is absolutely isolated to his room, which is, like I say to people, go sit in your powder room or your bathroom for over 12 hours a day, and that is what my father's life has become. All he does is sit in front of the television, and he has 3 meals a day. So I go every day to provide some therapy to my father outside his bedroom window with mental activities that we work on. He is being discriminated against living because he lives in a nursing home. He is not permitted outside. He is not allowed to have fresh air, which he needs for his brain and for his lungs. He is not permitted to have sunshine on his face. I have met with the regional director who supervises 15 of these nursing homes within Pennsylvania, Ohio, etc. I had an hour meeting with him in the parking lot of the nursing home last week, and we are trying to work collaboratively and cooperatively. But at the end of the day, my father's basic rights, he is being denied them. And our prison systems, where the inmates reside, have more freedoms of outdoor time and sunshine and fresh air than my 78-year-old father, who suffered a stroke and lives in a wheelchair. So I'm simply asking, how can we meet the needs of our seniors? As I do know, Congresswoman, that you mentioned that you are very concerned and you're very involved with the mental health of the Pennsylvania residents here in our state. Many patients are losing their will to live. And I know this because I have connected with many families that have loved ones at this nursing home. So as they pull up in the parking lot to try to visit with their loved ones, I say, "Hi, my name is Catherine. What's your name?" And we talk and we exchange numbers, and we are trying to unite to advocate for our loved ones to have some of their basic rights and to have them back. Not even.
Your thoughts, please, Congresswoman.
So, Catherine, I have to tell you, my heart breaks for you, for your father, and for every other resident of nursing homes across our state and elsewhere. This is something that I have thought about a lot. I've spent a lot of time on roundtables just last week, or maybe it was the week before. I had roundtable with nursing home representatives as well as people from the state who work with the nursing home. I had a medical director, and not to make it worse for you, but I had a medical director of a nursing home say that we are depriving people who have a year or two to live of some of the most important quality time with their families that they could possibly have. My own mother passed away in 2014. My sister and I had 3 months with her before she died. I can't imagine being unable to spend time with my parents in that kind of situation. So my heart goes out to you. I do think that we absolutely are going to have to change the rules for nursing homes. We're going to have to make it because I understand the risks of COVID. I understand that we must reopen safely, and I understand the importance of safety for the workers in the nursing homes. But at the same time, I do believe that we are creating a situation where people's lifespan, their end of life, and I hope your father's not at the end of his life. I don't mean to suggest that he is, but so many people are, that is being essentially curtailed by not being able to spend time with their family members. And so this is something, as I said, I had a roundtable with people representing nursing homes, nurses, LPNs, CNAs, people who were really committed to the life of their residents. And we talked about all of these issues. I have communicated with the governor's office about it. I do think we have to do better. We don't know what's going to happen as we move forward. The one thing I will tell you is that I believe that going to a system of 100% testing in nursing homes is vital. It's the first thing we need to do. We've got to make sure that we have instant tests that we can, so that you, if you wanted to go visit your father, could be tested. And there is cutting edge medical technology happening right in our district with a company that is developing that kind of test, so that if you wanted to go see your father, which of course you would, you'd be able to be tested. You test negative, you get to go see your father. You get to take him out into the green area outside the nursing home. So we can't do it this way again ever, because I think our senior citizens should be revered and honored. And we were all raised to honor our grandparents and so forth, and we are simply not treating them properly. I understand the medical considerations, but I also believe that the mental health, and I think the mental health of these seniors translates to their physical health, and we must do better. So thank you so much for bringing that up, and I will continue to work on that issue, I promise.
Al's next. Al, welcome to the call. Al, please go ahead with your question if you would.
Yes, my name is Al. I have a handicapped son, and I'm calling about the stimulus checks. I received mine, and he's on Social Security, but he never received his. Is there anybody that I can call or get in touch with to find out?
Al, you absolutely can. I'm going to punt again to Megan, my district director. We have got a whole list of resources for people who have not yet received their stimulus checks. Just as a point of fact, although people think that all the stimulus money has been sent out, it has not yet. There are still, I think the figure is 10 to 15 million people have not, that still remain to be sent their stimulus money. I don't know why it's taking so long. Wasn't intended to, but I would like to just pass this to Megan and let her answer your question further, Al.
Thank you, Congresswoman, and Al will follow up with you tomorrow. But just for everyone's edification, the IRS has indicated that they will continue to distribute payments through the end of September. So for folks who haven't yet received your payment, they are working on getting that payment to you. Now, individuals like your son are in the same boat as one of my family members. Because he doesn't file a tax return, the IRS does not have his personal information. So one of the things that you can do is to go to the irs.gov website. You can fill out a non-filer's report, a very simple form letting the IRS know where to find him. And also there is an 800 number that I will share with everyone that was set up by the IRS to address any questions regarding those economic impact payments. Get your pen ready. So for any questions regarding stimulus, you can call the IRS hotline at 800-919-9835. And again, that's 800-919-9835. Or you can call the Congresswoman's District Office at 484-781-6000.
Thank you for that. We're ready for another question. It's Lynn. Lynn, welcome to our call. Lynn, please go ahead with your question.
Hi, this is Lynn from Bethlehem. Thank you for being here. This is a really informative evening, so I really appreciate it.
Glad to hear it,
Lynn. Sure. How would you rate or critique our primary voting process? How did we do this year? I know myself, I was brand new to it. I stepped in and was a poll worker, and I know a lot of new poll workers were there. So at the end of the day, how did the mail votes go? How did the precincts handle everything? How did you feel about it, and are we ready for November?
So I'm glad I think we're ending on this question, and I'm glad you raised it because I think it's so critical. I would give Pennsylvania a solid C. Parts of the state did well, and parts of the state did abysmally. Announcing the day before the election that we were going to extend the receipt for mail-in ballots by a week on the eve of the election day for 6 counties caused a lot of confusion. There were races, one race in particular, a statewide race for Auditor General, I think just got declared today. This is June 11th, and election day was on June 3rd, I think. So that to me, we didn't do as badly as some states. That's not a great rating, but I would call it a C. We are not ready for November. We've got to get ready for November. And I think it's really important to understand that under the CARES Act, we allocated money that is specifically designated for elections. I think Pennsylvania got something on the order of $14 million to make sure that elections during COVID are carried out in a fair, safe and democratic way. We need to be making sure that we have more standardization among counties. We have some counties that will mail registered, every registered voter will get a mail-in ballot, and it'll be postage paid, and all you do is fill it out and mail it back in. Other counties, including most of the I think all 3 counties in Pennsylvania 7, you apply for your absentee ballot. In some cases, it takes a long time to receive it, and then you have to put a stamp on it, assuming you can find a stamp or go out and buy one, and get it back. So we've got a lot of work to do. I know that the governor is creating a working group to deal with this. I am hopeful that we're going to get it right before November, because we cannot have to wait for several days, or even worse, a week or more, for the results of the presidential election and the other elections. There are some states that have done it incredibly well. I understand that Iowa had a perfect primary. They sent every registered voter a mail-in ballot. I don't know if it was postage paid or not, but they sent every registered voter a mail-in ballot, and they had record turnout with it was seamless in Iowa. And when asked how did they do that, how could they afford to do it, the answer was, we used the money that was allocated to us under the CARES Act. So I want to see us take advantage of that and really improve this mail-in. By the way, let me just say, I'm very glad that we have mail-in voting, and that was established long before COVID, maybe not long before, but last year sometime. I think without mail-in voting, we would have seen really suppressed turnout, and I'm very, very worried about states like Georgia that clearly have not yet figured out how to do this properly. But it's a vital issue, and one that is at the top of my priority list.
All right, well, we've run out of time. We're actually past the time. I want to remind folks that if they ask a question, whether they press 0 or not, they can leave us a voicemail at the end of this call. If you want us to get back to you, you must give us contact information, such as obviously your name, phone number, email address, some way where we can circle back. You got to stay to the end of the call to leave us that voicemail, no matter what. Congresswoman Wild, bring us to the finish line, if you would, please.
Well, I just want to thank everybody for participating in this. A real democracy works best when people are involved in it. It is not just about elected officials making decisions. Elected officials are intended to represent the people who elect them. So I consider your input to be vital to the work that I do in Washington and that I do back here in the district, which, by the way, since we've all been working from home, I've actually had the very pleasant experience of spending hours and hours a day on the phone with individual constituents. It's one of the I guess it's the only silver lining I can come up with for COVID. But I really treasure that time that I've had with all of you, both in those calls and tonight. And I thank you for participating, and I hope you will continue to stay engaged with our office. So with that, good night, be well, take care of yourselves and your family.